So from baby boomers to the current generation, that there's a big generational shift that's also happened in talent, right? So all of you been in the MBA course for how long? One semester?
No.
Just recently, few days.
Okay, wonderful. So then I'll ask you, what do you want to hear from me? See, I have a few things which I can give you as tips based on my experience and what you should be looking at given today's world and today's talent marketplace. Right? And by the way, the only thing I'll tell you, I hope the guys in the back can hear me.
Yeah, yes.
Right? Comfortably. See, what has happened increasingly, if you see in today's business world, talent is becoming very critical. It's almost becoming like a competitive advantage for companies. Even for traditional brick and mortar companies, which are in the traditional business, they are all getting disrupted with a lot of digital stuff that's happening. You know, for those of you who know, those of you who may know, there's something called manufacturing 4.0. Has anybody heard that term? So even manufacturing is going digital. Today you have factories in a lot of countries like Germany. The robots don't need rights to do their work, so they're called dark factories. So that's reality today, right? But there is also a fear amongst a lot of people that robots are going to take up, and AI, generative AI, and all of these things are going to take away jobs. And what are humans going to do? So that's the challenge before each one of you and each one of us. We are probably towards the end of our careers, right? We are towards the tail end of our careers. I may have another. So when I say we, I'm talking about we, Vikram, people of our vintage, right? We have maybe 10 years, 12 years more to give. So we are not going to be that impacted as each one of you. So I think what's important for you to realize is that today your competition is not just with other humans, it's also with these machines. And that's real. It's not sci-fi. So given that this is the reality of today's world, those of you who are just getting into a professional college, trying to think about what you're going to do for your career, how do you deal with this? And I think that's the question that I'll discuss today with each of you. But it's very important for me that each of you participate in this, because otherwise, I can read this speech and go in 5 or 10 minutes. It's not going to result in anything. You're not going to benefit from that, right? So tell me, how do you think humans are going to deal with this situation? Are managers, each one of you are aspiring to be a manager and then a leader, right? Business leader. So each one of you, how do you think, what would a business leader require in, say, 20 years' time? When you would be with roughly 30 odd years of experience, right? So try and visualize. What do you think business leaders of that time, which all of you are aspiring to be, would need to be successful? Show of hands. Any thought that comes to your mind, I'm happy to hear. And there are no right or wrong answers.
Professional as well as emotional intelligence.
Professional and emotional intelligence. Good job. Anybody else?
Sir, knowledge about the AI and upcoming trend and like upkeeping them with the market.
Keeping up to date with the latest
Yes.
technology.
Yes, sir.
Right?
This will help.
Okay. Press. Anything that comes to your mind. Start speaking, otherwise I don't know whether you are even listening here.
So business leaders might require more talent that is focused towards strategic parts of the divisions.
Elaborate.
For example, I mean, if we are looking years down the lane, then as the AI is becoming more advanced, as we know that tech giants are pouring billions of dollars into it. So I think that first of all, the most back-ended roles are going to get eliminated.
Okay.
I think this is one of the first impact that we are going to see in years to come.
Okay. So I'll suggest one read for all of you. Whenever you get your spare time. It's a fairly research intensive field. So it's not necessary that you read every page to page, but take the key points from this. There's a report published by World Economic Forum called The Future of Work. The report. They publish it every year. So read the 2025 version of the World Economic Forum's Future of Work report. That tells you, that gives you an analysis of how these technologies are going to impact which jobs are more likely to be impacted, which jobs are less likely to be impacted, and so on and so forth. And guess what? They have been proven wrong in the past. Because the trend that they foresaw will happen in say 10 years have happened in 5 years. So the pace of change is even more rapid than the experts in World Economic Forum have anticipated. So it's going to hit you at the speed of light. Okay, so read this. It's very interesting, some of the trends that you get. You get a lot of infographics also if you have a problem reading reports. You will get a lot of infographics also if you Google, which will give you key insights, right, from this report. But it's very important for you to know what you are going to get into. Okay, so read that. Okay, I'm sure you heard these, have you heard this stuff? VUCA. Okay, not yet, right? But that's the other one that you should research. Okay, I'll tell you some facts of VUCA. VUCA, by the way, is an outdated model. It's a leadership model that was, and it came from the US military. So VUCA actually means volatile. Can anybody help me? Volatile? VUCA, Google, yeah? You have your phones, right? Google. Discover what's VUCA. So, volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex. So they described the world, and this was post-Cold War, right? After the Soviet Union had crashed, and America was the sole superpower. And that their military was trying to understand how the world is today. And how do we understand? So this is a leadership model to understand the world. What's going to happen in the world, right? So this came up in the 90s, it was in vogue in the 2020s, and then you have another model called you can Google this as well. Anyone?
Brittle,
Anxious, brittle, anxious,
non-linear,
non-linear. So if you see these two models, what's the key difference that you see? This one says it's volatile, uncertain. So there is uncertainty, complex, and right? Tough to understand. What's going to happen? Okay? Change is happening, it's uncertain, so change basically. Here, it's almost like you don't have any control. It's brittle, as in It can change anything can change anything, right? So what social media post is going to go viral, nobody knows. Nobody can predict. Right? And it can cause the Arab Spring. It was caused by social media, right? Nobody thought the whole government will fall and all
I'm
of
not sure
that.
they know what Arab Spring is.
Okay, what is Arab Spring? You guys know about Arab Spring?
Have you heard of this word?
Okay, so a few years back, there's a country called Algeria, right? Algeria is where the Arab Spring started. It was started by a fruit seller who immolated himself, protesting against the government, self-immolated himself, burned himself, protesting against the government, that the government was not doing anything for the people, and there was high price rise, and he was not able to run his family, and so on and so forth, right? And then the entire revolution in that country happened through social media. At that time, Facebook was more in than Instagram, so Facebook was used, and people used to say, gather at so and so place, and all of that was happening through instant messaging. And so that led to the overthrow of that government. And then it spread from one country to the other country, including Egypt, Libya. A lot of these countries lost their dictators who were overthrown by this movement. So this is called Arab Spring, right? Yeah, but nobody realized that those social media posts done by people could lead to a country being overthrown, right? So it's very good, right? Anything can happen anytime. There are no patterns that you can draw. In these, you can still draw some patterns. Anxious. People are so anxious. The amount of stress in today with wars happening, Trump giving a tweet every day, and the policy, US government policy changing overnight. All of that is coming right out of the blue, right? Very difficult to predict. So people are anxious. People are anxious they will lose their jobs. Business leaders are anxious whether they lose their business, XYZ. Business models are all over the place, right? They can change overnight. Then, non-linear. How many of you are engineers? Nobody? So linear programming would.
Sir, I'm civil engineer.
Huh?
I'm civil engineer, sir.
Oh, you're a civil engineer. Okay. So linear programming won't work. I mean, you can't think linearly now. Right? And what's the final one there? Nobody is able to comprehend, right? So between this and this, you'll find that things are getting worse, right? And all of us are not in control. So these are leadership models, and this is what is directing people, that if this is the world that we are living in, then how do you deal with it? Right? What should be your coping mechanism? What should be the skills, competencies, capabilities that each one of you need to have to deal with that kind of a world? And some of you gave some answers, right? What could be? What could the managers of 2020 now tell me, given that this is the world that we are dealing with, and this model has come about in 2020. So don't expect this model to be alive after 20, 30 years, right? So by the time you become leaders, this model would have gone, right? Maybe even worse scenario would come before us, right? At that time. So tell me, even if you consider that this model will survive after 20 years, in 2040, given that that's how the world is going to be, now tell me, what do you think you guys will need in terms of capabilities to deal with this kind of world?
Analytical skills.
Incomprehensible.
getting to the incomprehensible.
Yeah, so non-linear तो नहीं चलेगा. There's something called fuzzy, and then there's something called generative AI and all of that, right? So generative AI also works on patterns. It analyzes patterns, right, of data over a period, right? Okay. So it's beyond analytics. No?
Sir, adaptability.
Yeah, adaptability is one of the key things, and I'll elaborate, but adaptability is the key, one of the key competencies, right? And it's a little bit more than adaptability, but I think the jump of your idea is right. What else? Okay, I'll give you a story, right? I'll tell you a story, a business story. There was a company in the good old 80s and 90s. People used to watch movies through DVDs, right? Correct? There's a company which used to rent DVDs. Even before that, people used to rent VCRs. I don't know how many of you even know what VCR is. Right? It's maybe out there. Huh? So VCRs. So there was a whole industry, just like you go to a library and rent books, read them and give it back. So there used to be an industry that people used to go rent DVDs. And this business was dominated by a company called Blockbuster. It's still there, but it's not in that business because that business is gone out. But there was another company which used to do that same thing. And they said, why don't we make it efficient for our customers and offer them these movies online? So instead of renting the DVD, they will rent the movie online. So they pivoted the business model from renting DVDs to online consuming the content online. That company is called Netflix. Okay? People thought they were crazy. Because good old days, the broadband bandwidths used to be much smaller, a lot of buffering used to happen, all of that. Right? So they said this model is not going to work. Maybe this model is ahead of its time. But today all of the others, including Blockbuster, which is the market leader, is trying to do that. But nobody is able to crack that code, which Netflix has. Which is why Netflix is what Netflix is. Right? So, what does this tell you? Something around what he said, adaptability. You have to have a very clear vision of where your business or where you are heading. There has to be clarity of thought. With so much of information overload, and you will continue to have more and more information overload, right? But that's not real information. There is a lot of noise. So how do you? So reels is all noise. You can keep watching it for hours together, but not get anything. So what is happening there is you are consuming a lot of. You seem to be consuming a lot of stuff, but that's not information. You are consuming noise. So if you continue consuming noise, you will think that 24 hours is short. I just slept for 3 hours and I watched reels for 16 hours. But and you are also consuming information from WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp you must be friends. People are consuming through WhatsApp. But none of this is information, right? And as future leaders, you have to consume the right information. Because there is so much of information overload, you have to understand the right sources of information. And understand where you can consume information. And somebody did say that you need to be updated on what's happening in the world, right? Not just in technology, but everywhere. Because unless you are informed, well informed, you will never be clear about what you need to do. And if you have to make a critical decision to pivot, that cannot happen unless you understand your customers' needs and the current business environment. So Netflix was one example. The other example I'll give you is of Microsoft. Okay? So Microsoft is a good old company, but Microsoft is not what the Microsoft is today. And about 10 years back, they were in a bad shape. They had all of us know Bill Gates, but Bill Gates had given over as CEO and he handed over the company to a guy called Steve Ballmer, who was his classmate in college. Steve Ballmer was a great executive, but he led to the downfall of Microsoft because the bets he took did not work out. So, for example, Microsoft, you would not know, also had a mobile OS which used to compete with Android and iOS. But do you hear about that today? It's gone. Nobody took it. Microsoft then entered the handset business. They manufactured mobiles for some time. And that mobile only had Microsoft OS. Only Microsoft mobiles and Microsoft OS. They again got back into hardware business. I don't know if you guys know, there is Surface laptops, a range of laptops which Microsoft makes, they call Surface. But mobile phones, they gave up. They understood that that's not the business. So all of these were failed ideas. So the whole world was then transitioning in terms of mobile from BlackBerry. I don't know if somebody's heard about BlackBerry. So BlackBerry to iOS, which was an app-based environment, right? So you could just download apps or whatever you wanted, and you didn't have to have preloaded stuff, which was posted by the company for you to consume, right? And you couldn't do anything on the operating system. You had to go with whatever was installed, pre-installed, right? But now, iOS gave you an environment where you could download this thing, the experience it gave, the touch experience. There was no touch, by the way, during back then. There used to be a physical keyboard. Right? So that transition was happening, and Microsoft thought this is a big transition that's happening. People are going to, and mobile phones are getting higher and higher computing speeds. We should move to this business. They missed it. And then Satya Nadella, who is the current CEO, took over from Steve Ballmer. Microsoft's shares were not doing well. A lot of people are saying that this company is almost dead. How long will people use Windows on their laptops? It's less. And Macs are going to replace. Macs are going to replace all laptops because that's the. And Apple was very clear they're not going to give their operating system to others. So only if you buy an Apple, you'll get Mac OS, right? Otherwise, you won't get that. So that experience nobody else can do except for Apple. So given that scenario, everybody had written off Microsoft. Nadella came in, and all of you know he's of Indian origin. He studied in Manipal, and he had worked for Microsoft for quite some time. And he was the guy who started their cloud business, something called Microsoft Azure. I don't know how many people on the tech side people would know. But Azure is a cloud platform, Microsoft's cloud. So he was the one who started their business. So what happens is he comes in, and obviously he starts meeting people, starts talking to all the business leaders in Microsoft. And he discovers that the only problem with Microsoft was not all of these things that had failed, but really the culture in that. So Microsoft had the right talent, so there was no talent problem. He had the right technology ingredients, but the culture was not. And he called that culture a know-all culture, which means that people thought they knew everything about software, right? They've been doing it for years, so I've been there, done that. Whereas he felt that they were, if we were to pivot, and Microsoft pivoted on it. Satya Nadella came in, they invested a lot in cloud, AI, so they are market leaders, right? They brought ChatGPT, they invested a lot in ChatGPT. They are the ones who launched Copilot. Every software of them today has a generative AI capability, all of that, right? That didn't happen today. While you are seeing it today, it happened 10 years back when they started doing that investment, right? Which has fructified now, and they are fastest to the market with that product as compared to anybody else. That cloud business, which was at that time dominated by Amazon, through Amazon Web Services, AWS, today AWS is fighting for survival. Microsoft is right on their heels. So all of this pivot happened because he changed the culture. From a know-all culture to a learn-all culture. So the Netflix story and this story tells us two things. That you have to be what is called having high learning agility if you're going to survive in this space. And what does learning agility mean? Learning agility means the capability for you to constantly unlearn, learn and relearn. It's a constant process because things are happening very fast, right? What is right today may not be right tomorrow, may be obsolete day after tomorrow, right? So your capability to keep consuming, which is why I came to the point that what information you are consuming is very important. Because there is a lot of brain fog that can happen with overload. So choose the right sources, but constantly keep unlearning, learning, and relearning. So if you keep doing that cycle again and again, you're always going to be current, well-informed, and well-prepared to face the challenges, right? So that's the first superpower that you need to have to survive in the money world. Okay? According to me. So two stories I told you about these two. Okay, what next? So the other superpower that probably I think people of the future, the leaders of the future, business leaders of the future will need to have is what is called systems thinking. And I don't know, maybe sometime later I can do a full on systems thinking, but systems thinking is not thinking about technology. The whole world is a system. There are dependencies, interdependencies. So what you do here will impact somebody there, because there are interconnections and interdependencies. So the ability of any person to understand the big picture and all the interdependencies and interconnections is very important. It's very complex, right? We said it's very difficult. You have to understand the interdependencies and think big, not very narrow. Only when you zoom out and you start seeing, if I do this, this will impact whom, that will impact what, and so on and so forth. So if you explore and you do a chart of this entire thing, and you're always constantly seeing the interdependencies and interconnections and looking at that big picture, you will be able to reduce, you will be able to take decisions in context of that complexity. So you understand the level of complexity that happens. That is there. So systems thinking. Not very difficult. I'll tell you that all of these are capabilities that you can consciously build. And the last one is called cognitive agility. It sounds very jargonish, so I'll simplify it for you. Don't go by the jargon. You should only understand the essence of it. Learning agility is constantly keep learning, right? Unlearning and learning. So which means you should always have an open mind. Open mind to see things from a different light and not be very fixated in your thought process. Right? Treat everything with merit and based on facts and not on rhetoric. So like Trump says, right? The big beautiful bill. What is big, beautiful? I mean, it's just a lot of adjectives used, right? And don't go by that. It's not as if that this was the biggest thing that happened, right? But there will be people who will use all of those, right? In social media, they'll say, "Oh, US is going to, go away. The dollar is going to go out of the window, and so on and so forth." So these are big statements. Right? Don't go by the rhetoric. See the facts. Is really dollar going out of the window? Dollar still constitutes of 55% of the global trade. So where is it going? There's no other currency even close to it. Right? But is dollar coming down in the importance that it had earlier? Maybe yes. So while it may not be the dominant currency that it was 20 years back, but it's still not going away. So cognitive agility is having mental flexibility. You need to understand a lot of things will be conceptual, right? Even today, if you have to use GenAI, I'm sure you guys have used ChatGPT here. Yeah? What's the China model?
DeepSeek.
Has anybody used DeepSeek?
Yes.
A dinosaur. I don't want to be a dinosaur. I'm starting using these, even though I have just 10, 12 years left of active career, right? So if any one of you have not heard these, I'm telling you, you are sitting under a rock, and very soon you're going to get extinct, because there will be people who leverage these technologies and will be 10x ahead of you. 10 times, right? And these models are evolving constantly. A lot of people said generative AI is not able to understand emotions, right? And generative AI can't read pictures. Those capabilities are coming. I was having a chat with somebody who's in Microsoft and is working on the Microsoft Office ecosystem, right? They have a video conferencing tool called Teams. I'm sure you are aware about that, right? So Teams is even going to be so cognitive that tomorrow it can tell you that so and so sitting in the meeting was quiet, which is not their usual self, so something's wrong with that person. And will prompt the organizer saying, "Why don't you ask this person a question? Why are they quiet?" And so it will go to that extent that it will prompt you with a lot of stuff. But even these technologies need something called a prompt. Yeah? So has anybody heard the term prompt engineering?
Yes.
Big skill. Just to get the right outcome, you have to write the right prompt so that the model gives you the right outcome. Otherwise, these models can hallucinate also. So it can give you a lot of made up information which may not be accurate. So don't believe on it. But if you know how to write the right prompt, you can get the right answers and you can refine your research very, very quickly. Right? So, cognitive agility, and I'll read you from the bookish definition, is your ability to switch between different ways of thinking, understand new or unfamiliar ideas, and stay sharp under pressure. So, that's what we need. A lot of these things are evolving, many of these are conceptual models. So, you'll have to be able to appreciate the concept behind it very quickly. Because if you understand that, you will understand where it is headed. Not. So the three superpowers, I'll repeat again: learning agility, constantly learning, unlearning, relearning. The second is systems thinking. How do you understand the complexity through interdependencies and interconnections? Look at the big picture of anything that we're talking about, whether it is a business or whether it is a small department within a business. You have to look at the interdependencies and interconnections that you have, right? That'll help you understand the complexity much faster. And the final is cognitive agility. How agile you are. How quickly can you understand concepts, things that are changing. It's connected to learning agility. But cognitive agility is also understanding the models, also understanding how I can switch from this to this, and so on and so forth. And so learning agility will help you to adapt much faster because you learn, unlearn, so you'll adapt much faster. Systems thinking will help you to understand the complexity of things, appreciate the complexity of things, and learning and cognitive agility will help you think quickly, at the same time flexible. So flexibility, adaptability is a very, very key word, very, very key words in the future. Okay, any questions till now? And then I'll tell you one story and then I'll tell you more questions. Any questions? You have a question?
So I have a question. So the layoffs that are happening on industries, I'm sure we have all seen the news that are coming on the daily basis. So those layoffs that are they really happening because of AI, or is it really happening as per the statement given by the corporates that we are restructuring our divisions and streamlining operations? So what do you think is the major culprit?
Very good question. I'll answer that question, but I'll answer this after I complete this, right? Because I'll take one question, but I'll start with yours. Okay, so now, all of you will be wondering, was I'm just coming to these school and not even started, you're throwing all these big words at me. What do I do? And do I really have the power to do anything? And so I'll tell you one story of a rookie. You know what a rookie is, right? Anybody who doesn't know rookie? Rookie is a person who's just starting out, not too much experience. Huh? Fresher. Fresher. Just take two. So there was a rookie, right? And this rookie obviously is a story in the Americas, the US. So this rookie was studying design, right? So, and they were living in a city called San Francisco, SFO, you guys would have heard. SFO is a very expensive. LA and SFO are very, very expensive cities. So they were two roommates. They were trying to, they were studying design. They had a rental accommodation where they were staying. And the rents were going up. And they were hard pressed because they didn't have enough money to give their rentals. So they started racking their brains. What do we do? How do we manage this problem? We still have to study design. So one of them came up with an idea. Saying, why don't we temporarily rent out our space, not sublet it, but rent off our space to some people who may be visiting, right? For 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So they figured out there was a design conference happening in SFO, right? San Francisco. And when design conference happens, a lot of people from other cities come, and so the hotels were chock-a-block. There were a lot of people who didn't. Typically, the people who are lower down the hierarchy who can't afford very expensive hotels. So they started spreading the word around that, people can come and sleep at our place, we'll get some money from them, and we'll be able to clear it. So they did that, and they were successful. They got some money during the design conference. They were decent enough, so they could pay 2-3 months of their rent just through those amenities and all that. So they then got an idea that if we create a community of such people, and that was the birth of Airbnb, right? All of you guys. So Brian Chesky, who is the founder, was just in his early 20s when he came up with this idea. So he was a rookie, studying. But it didn't happen overnight, by the way. It took him about 8 years. Initially, when they took that idea, they took that idea to a lot of investors. They invested their idea. People just threw them out saying, what's the big deal? So many people are renting holiday homes and all that already. So what's big? So actually the power of the idea was not this. They created a community. And the community is two communities. Community of travelers who are traveling different places, and a community of people who had a ideal facility which they could generate revenue. So they said, you're a homeowner, right? You have a room extra. It's ideal for you. You're not earning anything from that. Start earning from that. No? He Brian, went and stayed with some of these homeowners. He started advising them, saying this is how you can actually increase the rental of your facility. He also started seeing it from the traveler's perspective, saying what does a traveler need and what are those things that we should offer them. Right? So when COVID hit, all the hotels were suffering, but Airbnb was going through the roof, and that's when this idea, the power of this idea actually was realized by a lot of hotel guys. And then they started filing cases against Airbnb saying they are taking away our business. But do you think that idea is dead? So Ryan was a rookie. He had a courage of conviction and an idea which he thought would do very well, not just for himself, but for the two communities that we are talking about. Community of homeowners who had some spare capacity and the travelers. Because the travelers, I don't know how many of you used Airbnb. Okay, so Airbnb, if you use them, you don't just get a room and a bed and breakfast, right? What you also get is a local person who can tell you what are the nice places to go, which good restaurant, which hotel will give you all that, and home cooked food. So that's the power of that idea. So try Airbnb, not because I told you the name, but you experience the difference, right? And it's better than youth hostels and all of these places, right? Better than hotels. But obviously you have to make your choices. And you know how to make your choices because you will see the lights and the comments. That's the power of social. Okay, so rookies can really do it.
Can you guys listen at the back?
Yes.
Are you able to listen?
Or don't ask them to repeat whatever. Wonderful. So today Airbnb operates in more than 220 countries. And you would imagine the number of people whose lives are being used. And obviously, my idea of recounting this story is that each one of you can actually be a brand. If you have an idea, if you believe in your idea, whether you're part of a corporate or you're starting your own. Because business leaders can be outside a corporate also, they can start their own. Right? Okay, that's what I had today. Let's take questions, and I'll start with this question. And I'll repeat the question, right, for those of you who forgot. He said so many layoffs are happening in the industry, and people are saying the layoffs are happening because the companies are restructuring and so on and so forth, and not because of AI. So what's the truth? Right? Okay. Why do you think I'll tell you the truth? Okay, so I'll tell you my personal perspective. I don't think generative AI, or now there's another thing called agentic AI. I don't know how many of you have heard about agentic AI. That's even more scary. Huh? Agentic AI is even more scary than generative. It can really do a lot of other things which are far more complex. Okay? So all of these would lead to jobs. I don't know how many of you have heard these stories because you guys were not there in the 70s or 80s. But a lot of time, that was a time when computerization was happening in banks. And a lot of your PSU banks used to go on strike, fearing that a lot of people will lose jobs, right, when computerization happens, because you won't need so many people. Banks will become more efficient, right? Today, all PSU banks are computerized, right? nobody's lost their jobs. What has computerization done is to make the banking process more efficient. I mean, I don't know if you guys realize, but in the 70s and 80s, you had to withdraw cash, you had to take chutti from office. Go there used to be a token. You used to sit with the token in a bench, and when your token came, then you had to go to the teller, and the teller will count the cash and give you cash. That's the way you used to get money.
They will not understand because they all use.
No, I'm telling you. Yes, it may appear very fancy stories, but that's the reality. So at that time, people used to think, computerization in bank means, private banks have only 4 or 5 people in each branch. So a lot of these PSU banks thought all of these guys will lose jobs. It's a different thing that in India we have a lot of thing called disguised unemployment. People seem to be doing jobs, but they is not required. For example, in West, people will laugh when you tell them there's a liftman whose job is to press the button. That only exists in India. You will not find a liftman. It's a redundant job, right? You can press your own button and go wherever you want, right? Why do you need a liftman? You'll find that in some of the old banks and some of the old buildings. Okay? But otherwise it's not required, right? So, to answer your question, it's not going to be generative AI or agentic AI is not going to lead to job loss. It's not a job crisis. Yes, what it will speeden up is skill obsolescence. Today, the skills that are heavily priced, their value will go down because a lot of those things will be done by agentic AI or Gen AI. Right? So what do you do in this scenario? You need to be high on learning agility. You have to learn these tools. These are tools, just like computer was in 70s, right? It's a tool that you can leverage, right? If you don't leverage it, somebody else will and will become 10 times more efficient than you and you'll lose your job, right? Because you won't be able to perform at that level, right? So it's plain and simple. It's not a job crisis, it's a skill crisis. And these skill crises will become faster and more frequent in the future. Which is why learning agility is extremely important. For you to constantly keep seeing what's happening and you'll learn that new skill very quickly before you become obsolete. Does that answer your question? So a lot of companies are realizing this, that they can do things that 10 people used to do can be done by 2 people, right? Now will you call it, you can redeploy those 8 people elsewhere. But the problem is if those 8 people have not upskilled themselves, where do you deploy them? So they'll be like liftmen. 1 or 2 companies will keep some liftmen and just using liftmen as a metaphor. But how long will they keep them? So the onus is not on the company, by the way. The onus is on each individual to keep making themselves relevant in terms of the skill market. If you don't, you become obsolete and may not have a job in the future. Right? So the challenge really is to keep learning, unlearning, learning and relearning. And there is no end to it. It's a continuous cycle. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the best answer I can give. People will lose jobs and layoffs will happen in the future also. They will happen when the companies are not doing well or they are tight in terms of, hey, if my competitor is able to do this piece of work with 2 people, how can I afford to have 8 people do that? Where will I earn the money? Right? And if those people don't upskill themselves, there's no way I can deploy them elsewhere also.
Would be happening due to irrelevant product lines, or that if Microsoft decides that this product we do not need to
So
do
those are, see, anyway, and also business cycles will happen. Right? There'll be up and downturn. So some companies will be successful. And what I'm saying is applicable for each one of you, is applicable to the companies also. They're also made up of people, right? If they're not agile, they don't learn from their competitors, they don't learn from their customers, they become extreme. So it's happening, right? And it's happening at the pace of light, speed of light. So both to people and companies, both will have to do this, otherwise it's a matter of survival. And those who do it well will thrive like anything. They will. There's no sky for them. They can just go up and up. So companies can become phenomenons today in 7 or 8 years, which earlier used to take them 50 years, 60 years to become those companies, right? There are so many companies in Fortune 500 today who were not there 25 years, 30 years back. So it works both ways, right? So it's always the survival of the fittest. Any other question? पीछे वाला से एक क्वेश्चन कर सकता है. I used to be a backbencher, so I definitely ask. You can ask. Used to be a friend. Yeah. Anything goes. You can ask me about cricket also. You have to ask me a question.
No question as such. No question as such.
No question? Who's going to win this test match? Are you following cricket? You don't follow cricket? Who follows cricket? कौन जीतेगा?
England.
Why?
Because score was very low and the pitch is very swinging pitches.
But India will also bowl.
But there is no much experienced bowler India is having right now.
Only Bumrah is the experienced bowler in
Yes.
India.
But-
Siraj is still there.
But not much variation Siraj is having.
So you don't have confidence in Siraj and the others? Good, super. Okay, that's what I had for today. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, you may pass it on to your faculty. I'll be happy to respond on email also.
So, thank you, Deepak. Thank you for sharing a wonderful talk. And I'm sure you guys would have heard the corporate stories as well as the examples he shared, which I think are very, very important. And in today's world, as well as how the things are changing in today's dynamic world. The fantastic example of Buka and Bani, which are absolutely important in today's world for every single person. As you grow, as you learn more things, you will encounter these kind of things in every subject. So, thank you, Deepak. Thank you for coming over. Thank you for taking out time and sharing your thoughts. It's wonderful to have you.